Welcome to another exciting episode of Startup Stories with Sanjana.
Banking is never comfortable, so
Oh, sorry.
that's the point I realized that my money can work, I can chill.
Wow. Today's our guest is Mr. Sorabh Agarwal, the founder of AngelBay, which is an angel network which has invested in over 60 plus startups, and most of them are profitable.
So currently out of 80 startups in our portfolio, 32 have already turned profitable. And last year, these 80 startups combined returned a EBITDA of about 96 million. So it's like 1.2 million profits per startup.
So today he's going to share a lot of his insights into starting up AngelBay, being an investor, his own startup journey, and a lot of things about what he sees in a startup before investing. And he also explains and simplifies tough financial concepts like valuations and so many other insights that he has to share with us.
5 years back or 3 years back, you would have come and we would have given you 10x of your revenue. Currently, 2.5, 3x seems expensive. And hence, targeting the right investors early on saves you time. And it doesn't make you feel that you're doing enough efforts and there is no funding, because at early stage, it's very difficult to hear no 50 times.
Let's suppose I have to start a startup today. Can you explain with simple math and examples on how dilution happens and everything about valuations and pre-money, post-money, so all that. So without any further delay, let's begin. Hi, Sorabh.
Hi, Sanjana.
How are you?
All good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Startup Stories with Sanjana. I'm so happy to have you here. And before we get into AngelBay and all the wonderful work you've done and so many things about valuation, fundraising that you're going to clear us about, I would like to understand your early career. Like, you were an engineer, right?
Right.
You did your mechanical engineering and then you got interested in finance. So between that, how did you get your interest into finance and what sparked your interest there? And how has your early engineering experience shaped your career path? Can we hear more about those days?
Sure. So I'm actually a vintage 98. I passed out from engineering. And that point of time, I think it was a very different world altogether, because we were talking about what do you do in your career, and the main aim was to get a job. Right. So at that point of time, when I entered engineering, father said you need to do engineering. I went in there. And what I realized was that at that point of time, mechanical was the flavor. So I picked up mechanical. Computer science was just picking up, but mechanical still was the branch. So I just picked that up. And post that, once you get into a field, I started taking a fancy to cars, like most of the youngsters at that point of time. So that was my dream, to get into a company where I can build cars. Okay. And when I came out of the campus, I joined Tata Motors into their vehicle division. So it was like a dream come true. And while I was staying out there with my friends, few of them were studying for CAT. And that's the point I realized, there is something called finance. And the motivation was there is a lot of money in finance. So those were the early days when the financial decisions were making a career decision for you per se, right? So it wasn't thought through, just that because we felt finance is slightly easy because I was a numbers guy. And secondly, that point of time, it was supposedly the highest paying job. So I just went into finance. So that was the case. In terms of engineering, that was the first time I came out of my home and stayed in a campus outside. So that shapes you in the way that you start feeling that you can face the world alone, not with the protection of your parents. So that helps you a lot. Secondly, you see a concept of your network in the engineering first, because you are now dealing with multiple guys whom you don't know. But then for your day-to-day work, you need their help. So from a protected environment where parents are taking care of everything, you come out into the open and start spreading your wings kind. So that was the early formative stage. And once you get into a professional education like engineering or MBA, the thing is that the professors are a lot more different than your teachers, because professors groom you for the real world. And at least that's what I felt, right? And that's the thing which probably shaped my career later on.
Awesome. So, actually, when you're speaking about your professors, looks like your IIM Calcutta journey was something that really shaped you into who you are. So, can you tell us more about your MBA?
Okay, so I entered MBA in the year 99. That was the recession year. So when I was working with my previous company, Tata Motors, we had only 4-day work week. And out of that 4-day work week, even let's say the production plant used to run just for 1 day. So we had a lot of time to prepare for CAT. So that was the reason probably we cracked CAT. But once we came down to campus, now this was a way too different experience than engineering one. Because way back in 99, Calcutta did not even have an attendance system.
Ooh.
And a lot of people used to even come in the classrooms in shorts at that point of time. I don't know what's the culture today, but we had a campus where it was more about you're studying out there, and then you had night classes and everything. But that's the point I saw a different range of professors. So many of our professors were industry veterans. So the person who was teaching us finance, he was from ANZ Gridleys at that point of time. So he left his job, came down to the campus to teach. So a lot of these industry veterans actually taught us subject, but more than that, they gave us that flair for getting back into the market. So once you look at MBA, for example, in our case, lot less was about theory and more was about practical aspects and how do you present, how do you do a market research. So that just shapes you for the real world, I think, in that sense.
Very well said. And I can really resonate with you and get what you mean, because me at Masters Union, we also have industry veterans, and the kind of perspective that they bring to every theoretical concept that we read, right? That's really amazing. And that gets our pragmatic approach very, very right. I can get it. And post your IIM Calcutta, you worked in a lot of finance-related, roles, right? Can you tell us more about how that shaped your understanding into finance, startups, and when did you want to come towards startups and investing?
Got it. So post my campus, I joined CRISIL. It's a rating agency based out of Mumbai. That time I started with the debt capital market, but that was my first experience of job post my MBA. Pre-MBA, I worked with Tata Motors in their vehicle division. So CRISIL was out and out a finance company. There we learned how to do research and all that. And that was the time when we entered the financial world. So financial world is a lot different than automotive world, because automotive you tend to deal with a lot of blue collared employees, while CRISIL was completely white collared suits and all that stuff.
Very different experience.
Yeah, that just shapes you. You've come into a different world altogether. So I remember that was the first time I really wore a tie in my office. So that was like a different experience. So that was my financial journey start. Post that, I went back to Tata's in a different role. It was into strategy because I majored in finance and strategy. So I worked there for about a couple of years again on a plant for 2 years, looking after strategy. But again, it was the same atmosphere as my previous Tata company. Then 2004, I was lucky to join a company called Copal Partners, which shaped my financial career. So initially, I joined them for debt capital market, but later on moved to equity, then private equity, then investment banking. So it was just like a full gamut of careers within finance opened up. And that, I think, when I look at my investing career, that's just because I was able to join Copal Partners at the right time.
Awesome. You've climbed up the ladder to become the senior managing director there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Suppose that I am sure it's a very comfortable job and comfortable position to be in. After that, what made you switch your position?
Okay, so banking is never comfortable. So
sorry.
So I remember when I joined this company. So one of the main reasons why I joined my last company, Copal Partners, was that in my previous company called Tata Auto Plastics, we had 6-day work week.
Oh.
and we had a dress. And then you have timings and everything. So when I joined Copal, I asked them categorically, do you work 5 days? They said, we work 5 days. But obviously, when the work is there, you will work for 7 days and all that. So that was the initial start in Copal. But once I joined, you won't believe, after 3 months, we were actually putting a demand that at least give us Sunday off.
Oh no. 6-day work week was much better.
Exactly. So that's the way things change. So banking is intense work culture. But again, while I was doing my MBA, one thing what I realized is investment banking is technically the highest paying job in the finance vertical. There may be certain niches, but generally that's the one. So I wanted to get into investment banking, not knowing what investment banking is.
Okay.
But once I got into it, then I realized, I should not have asked for it. So I worked in Copal for about 11 years, but the burn rate is slightly high in banking because initially when I started, we were doing about 90-95 hours work weeks. And over a period of time, it got managed. But again, a normal work week generally tends to be about 60 to 70 hours anyway.
I know of 40. 60 is also high. And now you're talking about 90-95 hours a week.
Yeah. So this was actually way back in, again, 2004 when Word was different, right? Because we come from the families which are somewhat middle class, right? So you want to build a career, you want to grow fast. And that's the point Infosys and other software companies came in. There were millionaires which were being done just because of the ESOPs and all that. So that's the point you feel that you need to really work hard. So no one forced us to work 90-95 hours work week, but then you start enjoying as well, right? So that was
nice.
the case, because as a bachelor, once you come back home, you don't have much, right? While in case you are in the company, one, you do have a free AC, which is not there in your house, right? After 8 p.m., they will give you food, which is like pizza or something, which you normally won't have at home. So there was no incentive to stay at home as well.
Right? Such little things motivated you to work. That's really sweet.
So I heard a quote that little things are never little.
Wow, I like it.
Right. So these are the kind of things which shape your career in the banking. So banking is brutal. And unless you enjoy banking, it would sometimes take a toll. And the attrition rates initially were high. But again, in case you want to build something and you are passionate about it or you like the work, then it doesn't feel so onerous. And that happened in my case. But after a period of time, once you're into this industry for 10, 11 years, generally there are two things which tends to happen. Is one, potentially a burnout happens. Secondly, now when we look at in the current age, around 35, 40 is the time when you start thinking what I'm doing with my life. And the same thing happened with us. And so thought about it for, I think, few years. And then finally, when I was joining investment banking, my idea was to retire at the age of 35.
Oh.
Right. I was 2 years late, but then it's fine. Like I retired at 37. And once you retire, that's the point you start looking at other avenues of either making money, keep you engaged. And that's the way the journey of investment started for us.
Okay. So that's when you decided you want to, after 37, when you quit investment banking. So then what was your thought process like? What made you start? I remember you ran a private angel network.
Right.
So what got
okay.
you started?
So again, 3-4 things which shaped our career. So one thing was that after working for so many years, you feel you've already lost majority of your life. So when I came out of Copal was like a startup when I joined, right? So once you work in a startup kind of a culture where there's a lot of independence given to you, so sometimes you get spoiled. And so when I came out of Copal, I realized that I'm not cut out for working in large corporates now. In hierarchies, in terms of slow moving process, because in Copal the decision was like 15 seconds, 30 seconds, you decide. In case it fails, there weren't too many repercussions because your bosses are there to take care of you, right? So that's the culture where we grew in. So that was one of the things. Secondly, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that changed my perception about money, because I come from a family where working hard is supposed to be a good thing. And you work hard, you make money, you don't, okay, no one says you don't invest, but investment is just a side income for you, right? It's much more about just parking your money. But we never looked at what's the rate at which the money is being parked at, whether the money is sweating and all that. So once I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it just changed my perspective about money. And that's the point I realized that my money can work, I can chill.
Wow. That's a nice quote for any investor.
Yeah. So that is there. And I'll give you a very off example. During that time, I saw a movie called Luck. That's an Indian movie.
Which one?
Luck.
Okay.
Right? Luck, Luck. That's Indian movie. There is Danny, I think, in that. And I forgot who was the hero, right? Now, this is like supposedly a flop movie.
Okay.
But in this case, Danny is the guy who makes money by betting on guys who are lucky.
Oh.
Right? So he's riding someone else's luck. Okay. And that just gave me inspiration that in case I'm not working, can I put my money on the guys who are really working?
Nice. Which is nothing but investing.
Which is nothing but investing. And when I look back at that movie now, right, it seems that he was investing in these guys himself.
Correct.
So for me, he was like one of the early angel investors.
Very exciting. So post that, when you were quitting your, your job at Copal Partners, did you have a thought in mind what you were going to do next? And when did that start, basically, your next step?
Yeah, so that point of time, I left the job because I wanted to do something which I wasn't even aware. Okay. So I said I'll explore the world. Secondly, at that point of time, what I realized is that when I started working, my dream was to get to a job which will pay me 30,000 rupees when I retire.
Okay.
Right? So what I realized is that I had already surpassed my dream by a mile or probably many miles. So it's time to actually give back to society. So I started working with a couple of NGOs in my free time. And then just to see what's out there in the world, I started traveling. So I traveled for almost 2 years flat. I did about 40 trips. So it was roughly 2 trips a month.
Oh my God, okay.
But
very interesting.
Yeah, but those trips just gave the perspective about world. Because when I was working with Copal, we were just mainly working with large investment banks, large private equity firms, right? So we were staying at fancy hotels, flying like day in, day out. But that was a word of its own, right? But I wasn't aware about what's happening in Indian ecosystem. I did not know there is a word called venture capitalist in terms of early stage. For us, it's for private equity guys who are writing large checks, right? So that's the point I started exploring the world. And once I went onto these trips, and most of these trips were backpacking trips. So there you see how people are making money in different geographies. And then while I was traveling, I met a lot of interesting founders who were doing something of their own. And they were so passionate about what they were doing. So that's the point I realized there is an asset class called startup investing.
Nice.
And then we said, why don't we take a plunge? And that's the way the journey started for us about investment. And it was initially, it's just about to test an asset class. You get into it, you invest in a couple of assets, but slowly you realize that this is addiction. And once you invest in 3 startups, generally it's very difficult to come out.
Okay.
So we just got sucked into the whole investment piece.
What were the first initial 3 startups that you have invested in, if you can tell us about them?
So initially, again, since we weren't aware and this was like a very early stage, right? So I would not even term that as my startup investments, but first investment was in a bank called Oak North Bank in London that was started by my ex-bosses.
Oh,
Now, these guys were kind enough to let us into their bank at the early stage where they did not even need our money. But since we were ex kind of employees of theirs, they allowed us to enter. So that was the one. A second startup which I invested was called Phronesis Partners. It's a Singapore-based firm. Again, the CEO is an old friend and he was an old colleague as well, right? So these two were no-brainers because you have seen both of these guys building companies, right? And in case you can trust anyone, it's more the guys who've already done it and then you know them well, right? So that was the initial one. Post that, I went to one of my alumni meets and their people asked me, what do you do? And I wasn't doing anything. So just to make me feel important in front of my friends, I said, I invest. And these guys said, why don't we co-invest with you? And that's the point we got cornered. And we said, okay, while we are investing, let's co-invest together. Suppose that we invested in a couple of firms. One was a company called Triplift, which was started by our college juniors. That was a passion project for us because I was traveling and it was a no-brainer that you need to get into investment into this space. And again, going back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? There is a way of making money which is separate, but there is your passion which is separate, right? In case you can merge both of these, nothing like it. So we tried doing it with Triplift. And then Triplift's founder's friend also came in because this founder said, my friend is also raising money. Why don't you look at the company? Early stage, we invested in both. Unluckily, both of these companies did not survive.
Oh, no.
But we were passionate. But that gave us a very good lesson that when you talk about investment in traveling and traveling itself, they are two separate words. You can't merge.
Passion and work cannot always coincide.
It can coincide, but while you're traveling, what you see is the jazz around traveling. You are sitting in a car, you're going to a mountain. While you are starting up a startup into traveling, most of the time you're just coordinating. You're not traveling yourself, right? So it's not even, I would say, it's travel-related startup, but it's not your passion per se.
After merging, it's not passion anymore for you, sometimes.
So that was expensive learning, but I think a good learning and worth the money we invested.
That's the thing about passion. Even after we go wrong, we don't feel very bad about it.
That's true.
So, post that, your initial investments were all from your family and friends and people you know already. So that's how it got started.
Right.
And post that, when did you start AngelBay exactly and how was the road to it?
Okay, so what happened is once you get into the system, it just actually becomes very enticing because then we had about 5 early investors. We were investing together. Now, once you go out and say that you are investing, people want to get attached because this is 2015, this is 2017. So it was glamorous about...
Very glamorous.
So you can always brag about it and all that, right? So then we had friends of friends started coming. Why don't we invest with you? And once people know that you're investing, then a lot of early stage opportunities tend to come to you. So that just started on its own. And then one day we realized, we have already invested in about 22 companies. And then it started seeming like, okay, this is some work we are doing, right? But then we continued in that fashion because for us, it was our money. And whoever wants to invest can co-invest with us. But then COVID happened. And we had nothing to do. All travel stopped. You're sitting at your home doing nothing. Then just a bright idea came in. Why don't we start a company? And whatever we were doing for last 4-5 years, in let's say investing in a personal capacity. Now that's the thing which we converted into AngelBay. So one of my cousins was running a similar kind of a setup. We just merged and started AngelBay. And so most of the things in my life happened with accident, like no thought process, nothing like a strategy around it.
Accidents work well.
Yeah.
Sweet accidents. Nice. So when you merged, this reminds me of your experience and expertise in M&A,
Right.
mergers and acquisitions. And I also see that you have been mentoring during this same phase a lot of startups about mergers and acquisitions. We usually tend to associate these words with large companies.
Right.
So how is it like for startups, and what are some of the things that maybe you would like to share with us for our understanding?
Right. It's about, let's say, that's, I think, one of the issues in the industry, that people feel that M&As are for large companies. For large companies, it's always worthwhile because you need to spend a lot of time and energy in terms of merging a company. You don't need to have a lot of paperwork, a lot of, let's say, advisors need to get involved, right? So it's expensive and it's a long affair.
Yeah.
But again, the advantage was that since we had done mergers of our own in Copal, right? There we bought companies. Copal was sold to Moody's at one point of time.
Okay.
And we were there on the table, right? So you understand how the work is done and you pick it up. And then you realize that you don't need a lot of expensive consultants to run a M&A deal in case you know how to run a deal.
Okay.
And then it becomes easy. And once you remove the cost factor from the whole equation, even at a small level, you can easily do the mergers. But then one of the key things, and this is like my learning from my MBA days, that 70% of the mergers fail. And they fail just because of the cultural misfits. And this is something which we were aware about. And that's where we started getting into the M&A ourselves with that particular learning in mind. And when we look at our, let's say, portfolio currently, we do a lot of M&A. I think we have already bought over 6-7 companies within our portfolio companies. So company A buying company B. That's easy once you do at a smaller level.
Interesting. Any good example that you can share how a startup has benefited through merger or an acquisition?
Right. So what happens is, once you are a startup, right, the thing is that you can't do everything on your own.
True.
You need, let's say, either good people. Sometimes you find good people working in a job, but other times while you are dealing with your vendors, your customers, you find good opportunities, right? So you can always do a backward or a forward integration by acquiring either your vendor or a client. So these things just happen not by design. It's by, let's say, opportunity comes to you at some point of time. Secondly, in case you want to start 3 verticals together, which is like a very difficult task for a single person. But once you start acquiring these assets, it's a lot easier. But you need to be aware about how to acquire things and how to integrate, because most of the mergers fail in the integration part. So in our case, generally what we do is we see that in case we do have, let's say, a fintech which was into fee financing of students, right? Now, these guys can actually acquire any company which is to do with edtech, because they can never run a edtech. These guys are fintech guys. But for running their fintech, they need a lot of support on the education side.
Makes sense.
So rather than developing that capability in-house, they can always acquire. Secondly, what we have seen is that a lot of people can't manage teams cross-border.
Okay.
So it's better in case you acquire a running asset in a different company at
Makes
a
sense.
reasonable price. Then you do have local flavor. People are connected. You bring in your know-how of running a large company and can acquire a smaller asset in a different country. So a lot of these things are easily doable at a very small scale.
That's nice. Interesting. So awesome. Looks like your experience there is definitely helping all your portfolio startups right now. So talking about it, can you tell us more about what kind of services AngelBay provides to the portfolio startups that you invest in?
All right. So initially we started like a normal angel network where we were just thinking about investing in the startups. But then what we realized is this is a place where you own a piece of startup. Because in case today I pick up shares of Infosys, right, I don't still feel that ownership because I picked it up from the public market. But once you get into the startup, your name is on the cap table, you tend to feel somewhat connected to the startups, right?
True.
So that's the point we started getting engaged with the startups a lot more deeply. So one portion of angel investment is about making money, but secondly is about getting kicks by working with the founders at the early stage. So in our case, when we say we don't really provide a lot of services to the startups, but once you start investing into the startups, what you realize is that there is a lot of experience of the investors which can come and help the startups. So this is the place where we come, and there are certain certain founders where we mentor them, because it's easy to get from a 0 to 1, but then you need different skill sets for
Yes.
1 to 10, right? And many of the founders haven't worked in large corporations with large teams, right? So they need the right kind of inputs or strategic directions initially. That's one, which we do. Secondly, few founders aren't too comfortable talking to large clients, large enterprise clients, and closing large deals. So this is a place where we come in and we help our founders negotiate large deals with large clients. So we are actually negotiating a deal with Disney. Other deal we are negotiating is with Vodafone in Europe. Now, because of our experience in the past, these conversations seems normal, right? But for someone who is out of campus about 8-10 years, haven't been into this system, right? They fare well, but they just need someone to have their back while they are discussing things. And sometimes what happens is these deals become very innovative, very different than a normal business deal.
True.
So they just need someone to look at the deal and see in case they're making a mistake somewhere. So that's the second place where we come in. Thirdly, we help them think about a business alliance, because we believe in an ecosystem play. And in case you are running alone, you can probably, let's say, run faster for some point of time. But then you need an ecosystem around you who can help you grow a lot faster.
True.
And that's a place where we bring in ecosystem for our startups as well.
Got it. So apart from just money, you are giving your expertise, experience, and the network to the
Yeah.
startups.
Very well put.
So now that I see a lot of value for the startups who are in your portfolio, what are some of the things that you look in a startup before you start investing in them?
Right. So things have evolved, right? 8 years back, we were looking for different things. And once you have been an investor, you understand certain things you are expecting from the founders is too much. So at this stage, what we are looking for is generally a seasoned founder who has got either experience into the same field or who is too passionate about that particular thing. So that's one of the things, that it's a lot of hustle. So unless either you're passionate or you have got some experience into that area, it sometimes becomes difficult to survive.
Makes sense.
Secondly, we look at the track record in terms of how much hustle you can have, right? So in case you build a startup in your last avatar, which did a revenue of 1 crore, right? And now you tell me that within 2 years, you will get 200 crores. It becomes difficult to believe, right? So what we need is someone who has built large companies, large teams or something that just mitigates your risk. What again, I'm not saying is that that's required, but these are the kind of criteria we generally tend to use to evaluate startups. Thirdly, then it shifts from the founder to probably even the company, that what kind of startup you are building. Does it require, let's say, a lot of capital? Then potentially we will just not get in, because in case the company is dependent upon a lot of external capital and you're not able to source it, it may happen that the company is good, but it may die. So those kind of companies are difficult for us to invest in. We don't invest in capital intensive companies. It should be asset light companies and all that. And then the field or the area which you are working in, it should be somewhat upcoming. And not again saying that we won't invest in a declining industry. A good asset in a declining industry is still a good asset for us.
Okay. Any example for that?
So something like we are currently evaluating a company. I won't tell you the name
I
because
don't
we
mind
are
about the name.
evaluating.
Let's just talk about how a declining industry is still a good idea for you as when a particular startup is doing well.
Right.
So, any example of what kind of work or what kind of example can be?
So this is a payment company which we are currently looking at, and these guys are helping the guys with feature phones to do the payments.
Okay.
Now, once you look at feature phone and you go out in the market, people say that anyway is going to die.
Yeah.
Right? But once you actually build a solid base around it, the advantage is that it can't be a single product company at that stage. So currently they are capturing the market by being the feature phone payments company. But once you build up a base, once you bring in your clients, it's always easy to then monetize them in multiple other ways. But that's a futuristic thing. Currently, the whole idea would be to capture more of the market because majority of the large players would be exiting the market. And then there is a lot of, I would say, meat left on the table for you to eat.
Okay. But when you say market, we are still talking about the market who use feature phones.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a tough one for me to fathom how it can succeed, but I wish them all the best.
It's actually, once you look at most of the large companies, right? These guys aren't doing the product what they were doing when they were small. Just that they were doing a product which potentially has died, but then they were able to pivot at the right point of time.
Yes.
But in case they haven't entered that particular industry at the initial phase, they would have potentially gotten into a very competitive industry. Now, the advantage with the declining industry is that it doesn't remain so competitive.
Yeah, and that's for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's figure out with time how it goes.
Yeah.
So, coming back to the other qualities of a startup that you've been looking at, what I understand is you do not invest in capital intensive ones. I like that. And are you also very particular about profitability, or are you okay with the kind of venture capital investments that happen in this country today?
Right. So it becomes very difficult to be probably saying that this is my set way of investing, right? So we have invested in both the companies, but in case after taking our capital, the company can become profitable in 12 to 18 months, that's ideal company for us.
Okay.
Right. So the thing is the company doesn't remain dependent on survival for further capital. Now, obviously for growth, you need further capital, which you can always raise from the market. So we like B2B companies more because the burn is less. And then we can contribute a lot into a B2B company. That's one. Secondly, given a choice between a profitable and a non-profitable startup, I will always tend to go towards a profitable startup.
Makes sense. And talking about the other qualities that you mentioned, you wanted experienced founders, right? And people who have built something bigger before. Does this mean you do not consider freshers or college students for building startups?
Okay. Again, this is nothing like a black and white there, right? So there are investments we have done in very early stage founders as well. Because again, once you're in the market, it's more about how well you gel with the founders. But again, given a choice now, there is a fresher who comes to me along with a 40 years of age of founder. My inclination may be towards an experienced founder.
Okay.
And there are a lot of debates on, I think, net about this. It's just that, what I tend to say is when we talk about people doing MBAs, right? There are certain jobs where people prefer MBAs only, right? Now, there may not be a scientific reason. There may be a scientific reason. But what you're trying to do is mitigate your risk. So when we are looking for a stable growth company, we will look for a mature founder. But in case we are looking for a disruptive company, right? Disruptive tech. Now that's the place we would gravitate towards early stage founders, like just out of college.
Got it. And talking about different stages, do you invest in all stages of startups, or do you only pick Series A, Series B, or not that? I mean, the growth stage startups, or early stage or idea stage? Which stage of startups do you invest in?
So since it's our own money, we are agnostic. We don't have a thesis. But again, since the funds are limited, we hardly get to Series A startups unless we are already invested in them.
Okay.
All right. Otherwise, let's say when we look at our thesis, we tend to invest in the startups currently which are having roughly about $500,000 in revenue terms. That's the sweet spot for us. But again, there are investments which we have done which are pre-revenue as well. And then even late stage. So there are companies where we entered at $100 million, $150 million valuations as well.
Nice.
So we are spread across. So we are completely scattered.
Nice. Any success stories that you would like to share with us of maybe some pre-revenue startups which worked well, or any stage actually?
Right. So this is my favorite example, and it fits in multiple cases. So this is a founder, and I really would want him to see this podcast as well. So
we will send him the
link. So this company I declined 4 times, just because I could not understand the product.
Okay.
And this is like a slightly deep tech kind of a company into media space. And we invested into them initially with a small check. And once, let's say, founder even flew down to meet me to explain me the product. And I said, fine, it seems good, but I still don't understand it. But given my interaction with you, let me invest. And since that time, we have already invested 5 times in that company.
Okay.
For first 3 years, they never made revenue because they were building the tech. And that is one company where we continued investing in spite of the fact that they weren't revenue generating, because it needed to take time. So this company we entered in the, I think, 2018. And I may be wrong, but I think 21, 22 or 2021 was their first revenue year. Last year, 2023, they did a GMV of almost about 650 crores.
Oh my God.
Right. So this is like one of the success stories where you build the solid product first, you build your infrastructure, you build all your connections, and then you start actually just exploding in the market. And this is what they did.
Very nice. I am curious to know, without revenue and without you completely understanding what they're trying to do, what made you invest in them?
Founder.
Okay.
So sometimes actually what happens is you bet on founders, right? So, and when you look at probably top 10 of our companies, maybe 5 or 6, and just thinking on my feet, and it could be less or more. But I think 5 or 6 companies are there where it was just the founders we looked at. There was one company which, again, the person stays in my condo. And this company is P-Safe. I can always talk about it. So I wrote a check in 5 minutes flat because I just chilled with the founder. And at that point of time, that was one of the largest checks we wrote to him. Though a small check, but yeah, just again, sometimes you just chill with the founders and you write checks.
Nice. And I'm glad it's working wonders for you.
This is one thing which I realized, that once you invest on the founders, chances are that you would be successful majority of the time.
Okay. In the example that you gave, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly about the founder? I think you don't know that person very much before.
No, that was the first time I met the founder.
So what about the founder got you excited to invest in that person?
This is a very difficult thing, right? Because this is not, I think, not a touch and feel kind of a thing, right?
I understand it's not tangible. But if there's something that maybe you identified about the founder, be it their passion or the conviction that you got that this person will make it, something like that.
So yeah, it's very difficult to figure out just probably put in words what makes a founder click, right? But sometimes you just get those vibes early on. And I tried explaining in terms of, let's say, why I like certain companies, but a lot of time it gut, right? Once you're speaking to someone, you just get those vibes, you feel comfortable and you tend to invest. So with this person, I think one thing is the company is into D2C brand, which was a new category for me. But the person knew so much, and the person was doing such amazing work in terms of making PSafe a household name. And then once you look at the founder was completely on dot in terms of his numbers, his vision. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'll do after 1 year, versus trying to fumble and say, okay, this is where I've reached. I don't have a clue what I will do next. I'll probably grow by 3x. Nothing like that. It was more about, this is what I'm doing. This will yield you results. And this is where we will reach, because I know we will reach. Now, a lot of these conversations just make you connected or make you feel that the founder is a good one. Now, we may make a mistake, but still find that's part and parcel of the game.
That's nice. So talking about funding, right? What are the different options available for a startup to get funding? And let's get down to the basics and help audience understand very clearly about the different options if I have to start a startup for my capital requirements at different stages of my startup, right? From the start to in the growth stage. So what kind of options do I have available, and when should I go for each of them?
Right. So it's like, I'll just tell you probably one of the forms of funding, like how a funding could happen. Really depends upon how the founders see their startup, their pedigree and everything. That may decide their funding skills as well. And I can give you counter examples to my response as well. So, but again, generally the forms of funding, the initial one is bootstrapping, which means when you think about starting something of your own, you would want to have some initial corpus which you are investing in the company. Currently, the funding, or probably let's say 2 years back, the funding was easy, that you pick up an idea and people would invest. But prior to that, or probably in the current scenario, it's difficult to get a very early stage funding, because what we realize is that ideas are dimes in dozen. Right. And most of the ideas are not even novel, right? In case you are selling pencils online, right? Now you start selling pen or you start selling tea online, doesn't give you that this is the innovation, right? Yeah. So what has happened is a lot of these ideas just become run of the mill or already have been done in different industry or something. So once you get into the market, you need to have some bit of traction or some bit of validation that what you're thinking you can do. Till that time, in case you can survive on your personal money, nothing like it. Because then people see skin in the game. Yeah. And secondly, you are getting into the market with a tangible product, right? Not saying that you can't get money on a PPT, but it's getting increasingly difficult to do that. Yes. So bootstrapped or the founder's money is the first thing which happens. Second, once you feel that you still need money from outside, the easiest money you can pick up is from your friends and family. And that's called friends and family round. They don't care about what's the round valuation is. They just feel connected to you and they know your strengths, right? So they will put in money. Now, friends and family, generally rounds are small in size because people aren't so connected early on. But we have seen friends and family round of even $10 to $30 million even. Oh. Right. So you need to have those kind of friends and family.
Friends and family. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so friends and family round is the second one which comes in. And that money comes with a lot of responsibility because you know that these are the guys you would need to see day in, day out. True. Right. So normally, let's say once you're raising 50 lakhs to a crore, you generally tend to do a friends and family round. Post that comes your angel rounds. So angels are generally the strangers whom you have approached. Now, there are two ways of approaching them. There are a lot of HNIs in the market who are looking for opportunities, but difficult to reach because you don't know them, right? And they don't know you. Why would they trust you and all that? But there are professional HNIs who are investing into startups. They tend to write anywhere between 5 lakhs to about a crore or a couple of crore checks per se. Then you do have angel syndicates. You have Let's Venture, you do have Angel List, you do have Venture Catalyst. So a lot of these syndicates are there in the market who will evaluate your idea and give you angel money. So angel money is, let's say, anywhere between 2 crores to 5 crores, I would say. Yeah. right? Post that, you get into your Series A rounds where the institutional investors start coming in. And these are the places where you're raising anywhere between $2 to $5 million, and that's generally termed as Series A. And there you are looking for institutional checks. Though in your angel round, you can bring in micro VCs who tend to put in anywhere between 50 lakhs to probably a couple of crores in any investment. But generally, institutional checks start from $2 to $5 million. That's Series A. And then post that, you do have your Series B, which is anywhere between 10 to 20 million. And then C, D, E, F, which is like just you continue raising larger and larger checks. So these are multiple places you can take money. You can take money, friends and family, from angels. Then you go to institutions. Institutions are of two kinds. Either it's a VC fund or it could be a family office. So this is normally the trend.
Okay. And let's dive deep into the differences between angel investors, VCs, and private equity investors.
So actually, these three are somewhat, I would say, unrelated, right? The thing is that because the scales are so different, that in case your company is very small, you will go to angels. In case it has reached a level where you can raise $3 to $5 million, that's the point you go to VCs. And Ps generally write minimum check they could write is potentially $50 million, right? So there is no overlap generally between these companies unless it's on the edges, right? And hence, like, you know exactly where you are going for your funding per se. But the nuances are different because angels are early stage investors and many angels want to get involved. So you do have active and passive angels. So active angels help you with business. They help you with connections. They help you with mentorship. While passive investor, which will be probably 90% of the investors you will meet, they just want to put in money and get the money back. But once you come to the institutional investors, something like a VC fund, now these guys have a lot of their portfolio companies involved, right? And these guys are the seasoned investors most of the time. So they bring in that depth of knowledge, market connections across globe. Plus, they would bring in synergies with their own portfolio companies, right? So, and once you go to the Ps are generally the place where the company has really grown pretty well. Pretty large. Now you're looking for mergers and acquisitions. You're looking for growth. You're looking for acquiring assets yourself. So that's the point generally the PE comes. But PE guys are a lot more stable guys. They will look at your balance sheet. They will look at your profitability. And that's the point these guys would tend to invest heavily into you.
Got it. So basically the target audience, I mean, the target itself is very different. And
Right.
I see a lot of early stage startups with just an idea in mind, pre-revenue, aiming for venture capital fund and all of that. Mm-hmm. So what do you have to say for startups which are currently, facing a lot of difficulty to get the funding in this scenario?
Right. So this is true for potentially about 95-98% of the companies. The problem is the companies target wrong investors initially.
Yeah.
And the problem is your time is precious, right? So in case you reach out to SoftBank with a PPD, right? And the problem is those guys may be, let's say, connected to you. They may be courteous enough to give you a call, but like it's very difficult to get a funding from them at this stage at a PPD level, right? Okay. Again, I'm not saying it can't happen. Miracles do happen, but you don't build your business hoping for a miracle.
Yeah,
it's better to go to Vegas. You would have a better chance of hitting 1 in 36 on a roulette, right? So it's just you need to calculate. So, and the problem is then you would have wasted your precious time in going to an investor who is anyway not going to invest versus chasing an investor who would have invested in you, right? So that's the point. Once you are starting your company and once based on your stage, do some market research because now you do have net, right? And any of your courses, you're doing so much research on Google anyway, right? So look at who are the investors who are investing in your company, who are your competitors, how did they raise money, from where did they raise money? Talk to those investors. They may not invest because they've already invested, but they might give you perspective.
Got it.
And hence targeting the right investors early on saves you time. and it doesn't make you feel that you're doing enough efforts and there is no funding, because at early stage it's very difficult to hear no 50 times. The problem is you went to the wrong guys initially. So based on your stage, based on your idea, based on the domain you're working in, you need to start researching and go to the right guys early on for a better chance of success. So in case you're looking for a VC fund just on PPT, you need to know the VCs, or VCs need to know you, right? Because a lot of time you just invest in the idea because a good guy is running that idea.
Yeah.
But in case you are, I don't know, coming from a tier 4 town, and again, I don't want to spark a debate out there, right? And suddenly you say that I don't know anyone, I don't have any connections, let me raise a $3 million round on a PPT. Again, miracles do happen, but it's not going to happen.
Makes sense. So it's so much about what stage of a startup we are in, and we should know which kind of investor to approach.
Right.
And post that, like also talking about the advantages and disadvantages, right? That reminds me of the valuations and the kind of exchange that each kind of investor takes from our startup when they invest. So can you shed some light on the differences and about valuations a little bit?
Right. So valuation is art. And everyone is artist.
A finance person saying valuation is an art and no science or math. Okay, we have to hear more about it.
And in the current world, valuation is the art of negotiation and marketing.
Unfortunate truth.
And marketing. Right. So actually, this is one place where we do have difficulties ourselves. Personally, we tend to work on thumb rules, right? So in case you are a D2C startup, right? 5 years back or 3 years back, you would have come and we would have given you 10x of your revenue.
Okay.
Currently, 2.5, 3x seems expensive.
So much difference.
Yeah, because it's like any asset class, right? What happens is whenever you look at any asset class, initially there are abnormal gains because only few guys are dealing in that asset class, right? But once everyone start jumping into the asset class, the prices start pairing up. Yeah. And which is the place your returns from that asset class tend to go down. Secondly, when you don't have a track record, or you haven't seen something like that, it's easy to say, I can build a building in 2 days flat, right? But once you look at 50 builders across the country who are struggling to complete a building in 5 years, then the investors also know the reality behind it, right? And when we say valuation is an art, that's at the early stage. And we are just covering ourselves in terms of, because you can always give me a counter example that this guy raised X amount of money just on PPT, right? But that's like once in a blue moon kind of a situation, right? So every industry tend to have a exit multiple, which you can always go to NSE and figure out. In case you're a software company, for example, and software companies currently, I don't know, but must be trading at about 25 to 30 times their EBITDA.
Okay.
It could be more or high. Currently, I don't know, but roughly let's assume that's the case, right? Now, this is your exit multiple, which means in case 5 years down the line, you build a company which is doing, let's say, $1 million in EBITDA, then your valuation would be 30 million.
Got it.
At this stage, in case I need to invest in you, and I need to make about, let's say, 10 times on my return. With all the dilutions and everything, I can't give you more than $2 million valuation.
Got it.
So that's one way where we calculate these things. Secondly, you go by the going market rates, right? So different industries have got different competitors, different startups in the space who are raising money at a particular value. And that sets a kind of a benchmark, or at least sets the tone that in case you're a D2C startup, your valuation would be lower than a SaaS startup.
Got it.
Because SaaS multiples are higher, right? Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of thumb rules on which you tend to zero in on a particular valuation. Most of the investors have got their own valuation methods.
Yeah.
And sometimes even, let's say, the business doesn't matter, right? In case you come to me with something which I know like a back of my hand, I may give you a higher valuation because I know that I can help you in growth.
Got it.
Right? And hence, once we look at strategic investments, generally they come in at a decent valuations because strategic investor knows that they can extract value out of it, while a financial investor may give you a lower valuation.
Makes
Right?
sense.
So a lot of these factors decide what your valuation is. And there are other things which people generally aren't aware about. When we look at, let's say, multiples in a co-working kind of a space, right? So any kind of a industry has got a leader. A leader, in case, is raising money at 20 times their revenue. There would be the second person who would be the challenger, which is the second place guy, who would be able to raise money at potentially 15, 16x. In case you are placed 3rd to 10th or beyond, you're not going to be able to raise money beyond 3 to 4x. This is one of the key factors which people don't understand in this space, because for the winner, there are a lot of money which is chasing them. But in case you are one of the also ran kind of person, chances are that valuation needs to be very low.
Got it. Makes sense. And with this, let's get into rapid fire round before I have, and after that, I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
Your favorite pastime activity?
Reading.
Okay,
I'll change. Netflix.
Okay. What's the most memorable piece of advice you've ever received?
So this is given by my ex-boss.
Mm-hmm.
What he said is, in case you are going through a difficult time, start thinking about 3 months later. And what you will realize is that this thing doesn't matter at all. So everything will be then stress-free.
What is the one common misconception about startups and investing that you often come across?
People feel it's a lottery ticket. I'll make 100x in 2 years. Startup investing is like slow game. So once you look at most of the unicorns which have come up in the past, it takes about 8 to probably 15 years. Now, there are exceptions, but again, exceptions, you can't build a career based on exceptions.
True. Who is your biggest role model in the startup and investment world?
That would be my ex-boss. He is currently the founder of a unicorn called Oak North Bank in London. I worked with him for 11 years.
Wow.
And there he was like one of the most aggressive guy. He has been one of the most aggressive negotiator I have seen. So a lot of things I learned just by looking at him.
If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I currently don't feel that I have grown enough to give any advice to my younger self.
Okay, that's strange. Or maybe you were matured enough even in your younger self and that's why you feel this way. What's your most favorite aspect of being a part of the startup ecosystem?
It's about meeting a lot of guys day in, day out. New ideas, new ventures. Everything is new.
Nice. How do you define success as an investor?
Okay, the straight number is, let's say, the multiple you make on your startups. But the better, I think, just to get on the social side and to make people feel that I'm not after money. It's about the growth of a startup and a lot of guys getting jobs and all that. But finally, for us, it's the multiple we get on the startup.
Interesting. What is the one startup success story that has left a lasting impact on you?
That would be my second investment, which was called Phronesis Partners.
Okay.
Now, that was built straight up from ground. And we have been invested into them for last 7 years. That's one of the highest, like one of the probably
longest.
It's one of the largest investment we have.
Okay.
Plus, they are the most profitable one in terms of their EBITDA. So normally people say, how do you get your money back from startups? It's either sale or probably, let's say, exit through sale. But out here, we have already made 3 times our original money through dividends only.
Through dividends, 3 times your original
Yeah.
money. Oh my God.
And that's 7 years. So if people feel that profitable startups are slow, I love slow.
Nice. We'll talk about it more after the rapid fire. What are the top 3 qualities you look for in founders and their teams?
Ethics, passion, hustle.
Nice. What advice would you give to the founders facing challenges in raising funds?
Raise funds from your customers, sell more.
Awesome. I love it. With this, we end the rapid fire, and I would love to talk more to you about the profitability and the kind of returns you're getting through dividends.
That's again outlier.
Okay.
No, but actually, this is something which comes from the fact that we have seen a lot of PE investments, and once you're getting into a PE investments, it's a lot about the market multiples, which is like your multiples which are there in the listed market. And secondly, about running your operations profitably. So what we currently started liking are the profitable startups. So currently out of 80 startups in our portfolio, 32 have already turned profitable.
Wow.
And last year, these 80 startups combined returned a EBITDA of about 96 million. So it's like 1.2 million profits per startup of the portfolio, right? So that just helps you sleep well at night, because whatever happens, you're running a solid portfolio. So we don't really worry about things going southwards, right? How south can they go?
True.
Right. So that's the advantage of running a portfolio with a lot of profitable startup. It's not as exciting as trying to get a 50x, because none of our companies would be giving 50x. But as a disciplined investor, we are not looking for 50x, because that's probably potentially once in a blue moon kind of thing for us. And once you're consciously investing, that's not what we are chasing.
Awesome. So, talking about the exit options, right? So, for investors getting returns, and also the exit options for investors and others partners of a startup, can you please shed some light on all of these aspects?
Right. So normally for the early stage investors, or let's say angels in that way, right? You can always sell your stake to incoming large investors. So large investors, once you hit Series B or C, normally people say Series A, but I haven't seen any exit in Series A yet. So Series B or beyond, when you are raising about $20-30 million, that's the point large investor come in and they try to manage your cap table. So that's the point most of the small investors can get exit. In between, in case you are an individual investor, you are looking for exits, there are now platforms which have come up who are giving you exits in case you're a small investor. Thirdly, when the company gets sold, that's a strategic buyout. And that's the point most of the investors and even the large VCP firms get exit. Finally, IPO is the route. But when I look at my founders, 80 founders, hardly 3 guys have got thought process around IPO.
Okay.
Because the problem with IPO is the founder's equity gets locked, and people aren't capable enough would be probably a strong word, but majority of people don't want to run a public company, because then there is a lot of responsibility which comes in. But IPO is definitely a route.
So let's suppose I have to start a startup today, and I'm going to register it as a private limited entity with 2 of my other co-founders. So from the start of issuing shares to getting investors, Series A, seed, Series A, Series B, can you explain with simple math and examples on how dilution happens and everything about valuations and pre-money, post-money, so all that?
Right. That's my favorite topic. So people don't understand. Many people don't understand dilution, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. One company, we entered at a valuation of 42 crores.
Mm-hmm.
We exited at a valuation of 480 crores. How much times do you think we would have made on our investment?
Usually the answer would be 4 times.
No, 42 crores was entry.
10 times then.
Yeah. We made about 2.6 times.
Okay.
Everything
Please
else
help
went.
explain the math.
Everything else went into dilution. So what happened is when we entered at a valuation of 42 crores, the company raised 21 crores. Right.
Okay.
So we got diluted by 50% then and there because our post money valuation was 63 crores. Post that, the founders raised another money. So I think they raised about $40 million at a $40 million valuation, which means we got further diluted by 50%. And because there was so much dilution, there is a term called recapitalization, where you give additional shares to the founders so that their equity remains at least meaningful. So another 15% dilution happened out there. So once you start adding all these things up, we got so much diluted that rather than 12x, we got only 2.7x. So when you're starting a company with your co-founders, generally people tend to have a initial capital of a round number, either a lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees, or 1 crore, depending upon how much money you want to invest initially. Most of the people tend to start with 1 lakh or 10 lakh corpus. So initially the valuation of per share is about 10 rupees. That's a face value as well. And in case you are starting with a corpus of, let's say, 10 lakh rupees, you would have 1 lakh shares, each valued at 10 rupees.
Okay.
Now, in case there are two co-founders, assume that both of you are equal. So you put in 5 lakh rupees, your partner puts in 5 lakh rupees, and you pick up 50,000 shares, partner has got 50,000 shares. That's the initial thing. Now, post that you want to raise money from your friends and family. Generally, the thumb rule is any round you don't tend to dilute more than 20-25% stake, which means in case you do have, let's say, 1 lakh shares, 10 rupees each. Now you want to raise money from your friends and family, and let's say, assume that your valuation is 10 crore rupees now, right? So what would happen is you would want to raise, let's say, 1 crore rupees for 10% dilution, which means like you would need to issue another 10% shares. You do have 1 lakh shares, which means you will issue 10,000 shares more.
Yeah.
And since your valuation has zoomed from 10 lakhs to 10 crores, which is 100 times, so the share price you will charge your investors would be 100 times of 10 rupees, which is 1,000 rupees per share. So there is a concept of pre-money and post-money. So pre-money valuation, in case you have kept 10 crores, once the money comes in the account, you would have 1 crore cash.
Okay.
So your valuation of your company is 10 crores plus that 1 crore which came in. Other way of looking at it is, previously you had 1 lakh shares. Now you have 1 lakh 10,000 shares, each valued at 1,000 rupees. So 1,000 multiplied by 1 lakh 10,000 gives you a valuation of 11 crores.
So here, when we were recently having this discussion with our friends, the popular doubt that arose among people is that when I initially have 1 lakh shares with me, and now I want to dilute 10%, does it not mean that me and my co-founder, whoever wants to dilute their share, is it not that 10,000 shares among those 1 lakh, we give it up to the investor investing, or is it something else? Can you talk more about that?
Right. So you as co-founders are owners of those shares, right? In case you give me your 10,000 shares to me, I need to give you money, right? So the money will be taken by you, and company would not have any money lying with the company, right? And hence what tends to happen is, because it's the company which is raising money, so company gave you initially shares, 1 lakh shares at 10 rupees each to the new investor. Now the company needs to issue more shares.
Exactly. So basically here the company is a separate entity, and it's not the founder.
Exactly. So a lot of time people just take them as one, but there are 3 entities in the picture: 2 co-founders and the company.
Company as a separate person or a separate entity by itself.
Right. And co-founders, you can term this as early investors, because initially the company was formed and then the founders invested money in the company to make the company. Exactly. Every time new issue comes in, it would be company would be contracting with the new shareholders. In case there is a transaction between a founder and a shareholder, or among the shareholders, money goes to the seller, not comes to the company.
Exactly. So for the company to get investment, those 10,000 shares that we were talking about, let's continue from there.
Yeah. And so those 10,000 shares need to be issued to the new person, which means now the company has got 1,10,000 shares, right? And one of the complexities which tends to happen is when your friends and family won't ask for it, but once angel investors come in, they will ask you to reserve 10% of your share capital for ESOPs as well.
Okay.
Right? Which means you're getting diluted by another 10,000, about 10%. And this is, again, we are talking about in very round numbers, 10%. In this case, the dilution is not 10%, it's 9.09%. Because denominator has now become 1,10,000.
Not 1 lakh.
Not 1 lakh, right? So that's the way it happens. So in case you need to reserve shares for ESOP, that reduces the percentage holding of the founders. Their number of shares will always remain the same. It's just that the dilution happens. So just keeping away the ESOPs for now, because that becomes complex. So in the first round, 1,10,000 shares, and now each of the founders own roughly about 45.5% each, and the new investors has picked up 9% stake in the company. Right? So that's the one. Now, what happens is you do another round, which is an angel round. And you do, let's say, raise 5 crores at a valuation of 50 crores now. Okay. 50 crores, I'm saying post-money. So you would be having a pre-money valuation of 45 crores and a post-money valuation of 50 crores because you're raising 5 crores. Now, in this case, because you are doing another 10% dilution, you need to issue another 10,000 shares.
The company needs
to issue another 10,000 shares. Now, in this case, what happens is the incoming the previous investor who initially had 9% stake in the company, he would be diluted by 10% now because 10% more shares have come in. So this investor one would be owning now 10,000 shares out of a pool of 1,20,000 shares.
Basically, the denominator getting changed each time.
Exactly. And that's the dilution which happens, right? Now, this is like a simplistic case where we are saying 10-20%. Now, going back to my case, right? Now, assume that you were 2 co-founders. In the first round, you guys raised 5 crore rupees from the market, which happened in this case, right? At a valuation of 10 crores. So, in this case, what happened is each one of you got diluted by the tune of 33%. Because now, 50,000 more shares have been issued. So, you have got 50,000 shares, your co-founders got 50,000, and new investors got 50,000. So the investor, though, entered at a valuation of 10 crores pre-money, by putting in 5 crores, he just got 33% stake. Right? Yeah. In the next round, now, in case you are raising 20 crore rupees at another 20 crores valuation, in this case, you need to issue 50% more shares, which means your base is 1,50,000. You need to issue 75,000 shares more. But once you issue 75,000 shares more, the previous investor who was owning 33% of the company, now his shares go down from 33 to 16%. So that's the way the dilution continues to eat into your returns. Not really eat into your returns, but your percentage holding keeps on coming down.
Diluted.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for explaining the math behind this very nicely and in a manner that we all can understand. So now going back to the investors and AngelBay, what you started as 2 to 3 investors is today 250 plus angel investors, right? 200, sorry. So if someone wants to become one of the angel investors at AngelBay, what is the process like?
Okay, AngelBay is a closed network. It's a private network.
Okay.
So we don't take external investors. So we do have a set of about 125 investors who are personally known to me. Mm-hmm. And then rest 75 investors are friends and family of one of these investors. So in case you want to join AngelBay, you need to know someone in the network. Okay. Right? But what we realized is that this becomes problematic for many guys, and we were declining most of the investors which were coming to us. So we started another company called Angel Blue.
Oh,
Right? So Angel Blue is an open network where you can actually reach out to Angel Blue, and you can always invest through Angel Blue.
nice.
So the way to do it would be, again, reach out to us on LinkedIn and just put in your request that you want to be angel investor, or you can directly go to Angel Blue's website. That's www.angelblue.in, and you can apply as an investor there.
Nice. And if a startup wants to get an investment from you,
Right.
what is the process like?
Okay, the simple process is you can ping me on LinkedIn, or
Okay.
you can come to the website. We do have again a page where you can upload your documents and apply, or you can just pick up our email ID from the website and you can apply. Now that's the simple way, but that's like the most inefficient way. In case you know anyone, any founder, any investor in our circle, or probably any of my friends, family, anyone, in case you can establish that trust factor, chances of success are a lot more higher.
Nice. So now we know how to get investment from AngelBay. Any advice that you would like to share for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's like in case you're building a company, try to build a solid company, because we talk about startups as mostly, let's say, money guzzling businesses, which some of the businesses are, because they need initial capital to start, right? When you look at Reliance now, in case you want to start a refinery, you need tons of money. But in case you are starting a very normal business, generally once you look around, majority of the businesses have never raised money around you, right? So that's the point. Once you start building your company for the customers, chances are that the journey is going to be a lot more smoother, and the growth is not going to be stifled, because once you prove yourself somewhat in the market, that's the point. In case you raise money for growth, people are willing to invest there.
That's a very nice advice. Thank you so much for your time and so many insights that we can all actively work on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure coming.
Very nice to have you on Startup Stories with Sanjana.
Thank you.
So this has been our episode with Mr. Sorabh Agarwal, the founder of AngelBay. I personally learned a lot of concepts of finance which I could not understand in classroom. I hope you had taken back a few lessons as well. Please let me know in the comment section below how you found the episode and any suggestions you have, or any guest suggestions also. You can also DM me on Instagram or put it down on the comment section below. And I must tell you, I am waiting to host you on my show. See you very soon in the next episode, and hopefully very soon on my show as a guest too. Until then and later, always looking forward to add value to your startup journey. And do let me know how I can make your experience better at Startup Stories with Sanjana. This is your host, Sanjana, signing off. See you in the next episode.